In Southern California is a place unique in all the world, a modern Noah's Ark for the Earth's endangered creatures, a sanctuary for life, birth, and the beauty of nature. The San Diego Wild Animal Park. Spread out over 1,800 acres, the park supports more than 250 species and more than 2,500 animals.
The uniqueness of a facility like this is that you're able to work in expansive areas, unlike traditional zoos, which are very limited in their space.
We really concentrated initially on bringing together as many endangered species as possible in this park. Because of the amount of room that was available, we felt that we could do justice in a breeding program by keeping larger numbers of animals.
When I first came to the park, I realized it was really special, but it wasn't until I traveled to Africa and saw the animals living in the wild, and they were doing the exact same things in the wild that they do here. So coming to work here is a privilege. To me, this is a hobby I get paid for.
I just enjoy what I'm doing, and you can't work with any animal and not become somewhat attached. If you're an animal person, if you've got a feel for animals, you just care.
Unfortunately, a lot of the wild habitats of many, many species are disappearing for various reasons, population explosions and what have you. So we may be one of the last bastions of survival for some of these species.
We tried to do the park on a geographical basis, so that the animals you see together are animals that you would see within a certain geographical area. And of course we have to give ourselves some liberty and be a little bit flexible, otherwise we wouldn't be able to put as many things together, because they don't all occur, for example, in the same country, but they do occur within a geographical area, a landmass.
The Wild Animal Park's location is ideal for its unique goals. Its acreage, terrain, and climate support animal life from almost every continent. Here, within the city limits of San Diego, a dramatic series of large geographic regions have been recreated, allowing various species to roam in herds, establish territories, and live the way they would in their native habitat. Here, in the park's Asian plains, the Asian waterhole, East Africa, Southern Africa, Northern Africa, and a lush Australian rainforest with birds, plants, and mammals from down under. Visitors enter the park's Nairobi village through an authentic African rainforest. Here they come face to face with the birds of East Africa, just a sample of the park's total population of over 1,000 birds. Further along the village pathways, more examples of the park's incredible collection of plants assembled from around the world, and more close encounters with animals of the wild. Like all the park's features, Nairobi Village itself is a careful recreation of places far from California.
We sent our designer, Charles Faust, to Africa, and he went there with his sketch pad to make the detail of what you're looking at here. And then he came back here, and as they rightfully call this, is a Congo fishing village.
The energies of this man, Dr. Charles Schroeder, were the main force behind the transformation of this arid stretch of land into a beautiful wildlife sanctuary. A place where the world's endangered species could survive and multiply, and where the public could experience how animals live in the wild. Once Dr. Schroeder's dream began taking shape, a new problem arose: how to meet the very different needs of animals and people. Dr. Schroeder's team designed a moving vantage point that was both silent and non-polluting.
Primarily, we wanted people to come in and ride this train. And to do that, they could see all the animals interacting. These many species all living together and reproducing.
The route that Dr. Schroeder laid out provides everything he promised. Gliding over these 5 miles is like taking a sit-down safari through the world's greatest wilderness areas. From here, monorail guides describe the natural behavior of the animals and the important work of the park's animal caretakers.
And entering the Eurasian waterhole. As we enter the enclosure, just on the far side of the dirt road, tucked in the grass, you'll see quite a few deer down there. So we do have a total of 20 field keepers at the park. Their day starts at 6:30 in the morning. At this time, they do come in, clean, feed the animals, and then proceed to count all the animals in each enclosure.
Every morning, every animal at the Wild Animal Park, which is roughly 1,500 mammals, is counted and checked and made sure that they are up, moving, and healthy. Looks like most of the psych are over here on the right-hand side. All the techniques that are used here are basically techniques that are used by researchers in the wild. The keepers have to be kind of part veterinarian, part trained observer, and animal caretaker all rolled into one.
Can you make out their IDs?
Okay. Well, the male is 33, so that's the last one off that list. And yeah, the other 2 females are the ones that we need.
Many of the park's huge habitats house several different kinds of animals. Keepers have to pay close attention to the needs of each.
We strategically place all the feeding locations and feed a well-balanced diet, free choice, so all the animals here can come back to the feeder, whether they're a nocturnal animal, they'll forage at night, or a daytime feeder. I think this place is unique because we have such a wide range of species. One keeper can work a small 15-pound primate to an 8,000-pound Indian rhino in a 2-hour time span.
Back down to the right, a little closer look at Gainda and Gurkha, the 2 Indian or greater one-horned rhinos.
The Indian rhinos flourishing here in the park's Asian plains habitat are actually members of one of the Earth's rarest species. A black market in rhino horns has made these animals a favorite target for poachers, and now only a few hundred still survive in the wilds of Asia. That's why every Indian rhino born here is so important to the survival of the species.
This is Lasai. He's our adult male Indian rhinoceros. He's been the sire to all of our offspring here at the park, and he's real special. He was hand-raised, so he's real docile around people. This is Gainda. She was born here at the Wild Animal Park. She's pregnant right now and due real soon. She's about 14 months along. They have a 16-month gestation.
The park's rhino breeding program includes other species of rhinoceros. In the South African habitat, efforts to breed the southern white rhino have produced history-making results.
If you look way out toward the middle of the enclosure, you'll see another southern white rhino out there with a little baby. He just turned 7 weeks old. He's a real feisty little guy, too. I've seen him out here chasing the zebra sometimes. And when the zebras chase back, he just runs back and gets mom.
The park's prolific herd of white rhinos has helped remove these animals from the roster of endangered species. With a success story like that behind them, the white rhinos obviously deserve their status as the symbol for the Wild Animal Park.
That truck in the center of the exhibit is carrying one of our veterinarians. We have 3 full-time veterinarians at the park, covering a lot of patients and a lot of ground, 365 days of the year.
We are responsible for all the animals, every species, and everyone has their own little idiosyncrasies, their own little problems.
Here are some of the only doctors left who still make house calls on a daily basis.
We've got an injured female adult Altai-Wapiti Asian plain.
Sounds like we better get our hands on her, mobilize her here in the field, examine her, get some blood, and transport her to the hospital for x-rays and further care.
Park veterinarians use a dart gun to administer an anesthetic so they can care for an animal that's unaccustomed to human handling.
Down near the stream bed, a group of keepers and veterinarians are catching an Altai-Wapiti that has apparently injured a leg.
We work very closely with the keepers. They keep us informed as to what animals are doing what needs to be done in certain areas. There's certainly too many animals for us to be checking every day. Well, the unique thing about the Wild Animal Park is that there's really no place else like it on Earth. There's no place that I can go as a veterinarian and do what I'm doing. It's sort of a little cross between being a large animal practitioner and a cowboy and an exotic animal veterinarian. And I, thoroughly enjoy it.
The veterinarians, the curators, the head keepers, the keepers, all the way down the ladder are in love with their job. Thank goodness.
Being in love with a keeper's job means being in good physical condition, since animals here aren't kept in traditional enclosures, or even one kind of enclosure.
Hey girl, get me wet. There you go.
Our keepers go out to that island on a daily basis to care for the monkeys by using a boat. Monkeys can swim, but they really don't like to, so the monkeys do stay on the island.
Come on, girl. Atta girl. All the way. There you go. Good girl. You got it.
Other assignments take keepers in other directions. In this case, up the slopes of the park's mountain habitat, home to exotic Siberian ibex and Himalayan tars.
We've got a total of 30 animals up here now, and during the birthing season, April or May, we have a lot of kids, and they're hiding obviously all over the exhibit, and it's not uncommon to spend a couple of hours a day up here looking for the babies.
The variables here are more than just geographic. Each species represents different habits and needs, characteristics critical to survival. The park staff has to know what all those different needs are and how to meet them. In the case of finicky diets, it can mean going out and growing your own.
Hey, this is acacia browse that is native to Africa. We grow it here at the Wild Animal Park so that we can cut it fresh every day for the animals. It's used not as a primary source of nutrition, but more as a supplement for the animals.
I mentioned the feeder tree out there. The keepers put alfalfa in the basket, and then they hang fresh acacia browse from the limbs every day for the giraffe. That's generally how giraffe feed. They do feed from the treetops.
Every time I'm around a giraffe, I have to stop and just kind of marvel at them. Their size is incredible. 16 to 18 feet tall. You're standing down on the ground with them, you're looking directly into their chest. It's just amazing how large they are.
We like to rotate our keepers so they get a real wide variety of experiences and types of animals that they're caring for. But you do develop your favorites. The great apes would be one in particular that the keepers really have a real bond there.
I can look in their eyes and I know when they're sick. I could tell when they're angry, when they're in a good mood. Their eyes are very expressive. They're very intelligent animals and very sensitive. They're one of our closest animal relatives. People relate to them. Can I have that? Thank you. They know me and I know them. It took quite a while to where we could get used to each other. Once I had hurt myself and I was down at one end crying. And I heard whimpering coming from the other end. And I was still putting my finger on the cold water and crying and sniffling. And he whimpered again. So I went to see what was wrong with him. And he put his big hands up to my face. And I put my face up close. And he went like this on my tears and just patted my face. He had never heard me cry, but yet he knew that I was distressed.
You have a couple of tigers out over on the right, way down toward the bottom of the enclosure.
What we can do here is just save the genetic material and the species as a whole, whereas in the wild, with the increase in human population, all we're doing is driving the animals into smaller and smaller prime habitat, and eventually we will take over that habitat and they will be extinct. Here we have bred successfully here, we have produced a number of very good cats, and the future in captivity is going to be very good because of our efforts and other zoos' efforts. Unfortunately, in the wild, we're not going to be able to see that sort of success. I think what's unique about our tiger enclosure here at the Wild Animal Park is that it is 3+ acres, and also that we've tried to match as close as possible the wild foliage as best as we could. And that gives the animals a feeling of being in the wild and therefore more comfortable with their situation. The more comfortable an animal is, the more likely it is to breed. And in this situation, we do see quite a bit of breeding, and our prospects for future cubs are very good.
Breeding wild creatures in captivity puts the park's knowledge of animal behavior to the test. No small feat, especially in this case. Almost every mating situation poses problems, but few as big as the ones posed by these big beasts.
African bush elephants. These are the largest living land animals. They can reach heights of up to about 14 feet tall, and they can weigh anywhere from 8,000 to about 14,000 pounds.
Asian elephants, on the other hand, weigh in at a mere 10,000 pounds. The park breeds both varieties.
We're one of the fewer zoos in the country that has a breeding program. Keeping of the bull is the major problem, you know, with their, they tend to get, with age, they tend to get aggressive.
Introducing an aggressive male to a potential mate required building a state-of-the-art facility. These elephant-sized gates keep the cows and the bulls apart until the time is right for mating. Then they allow a relatively small human keeper to play matchmaker between two giant pachyderms. But what happens after that is strictly between the elephants. The park's magnificent collection of birds from all over the world represents a completely different set of housing requirements.
We're dealing in many cases with enclosures that are over 100 acres in size and aren't covered, which makes keeping birds a whole different sort of art.
Bird Island in the South African habitat demonstrates one park solution to the problem of housing birds in the open.
This island is in the middle of one of our large field compounds. The advantage to doing something like this is that we can exhibit birds without much in the way of interference of of some of the larger mammals. Mammals that might, in some cases, be destructive towards the birds or nest sites that they might establish.
And this end of the exhibit is an island that serves as a nesting spot for such birds as the sacred ibis. The general rule here really is if you see it flying around out there, it doesn't belong to the park. What we do is surgically pinion our birds' wings. This is
The island's youngest residents are a group of newly hatched ibis chicks. To prevent eventual flight away from this protected environment, every bird living in open exhibits has the tip of one wing pinioned. In the wild, flying long distances provides escape from predators and enhances the search for food or companionship. In this environment, those needs are satisfied through careful management. Cheetahs have one of the park's largest breeding compounds, since space is so important to these sleek and fleet-footed cats.
Cheetahs are very sensitive animals. They're difficult to breed in captivity. We have approximately 12 acres here set aside for the cheetahs. The reason that the breeding program is important to the cheetah population is cheetahs are an endangered species. They're very difficult to breed in captivity, and it's important to just keep the species going.
The cheetah is the world's fastest runner, able to reach speeds as high as 70 miles an hour. But ironically, it's almost been overtaken by extinction, a victim of poachers after its beautiful coat, and significant loss of its habitat to human civilization.
We've had one of the better success rates in the country. In captivity, as we're learning more about these animals, I think we'll be able to do a better job of reproducing them.
Even though these temperamental felines are far too sensitive to mate within view of humans, their park habitat is large enough to ensure the total privacy they need to breed successfully. The cheetahs aren't alone when it comes to a need for privacy. One of the park's most publicized species is housed so that its members rarely ever see a human being.
And if you look across the enclosure, actually up out of the enclosure at the hilltop across from us, you'll see a large aviary structure up there. That's where the California condors are kept at the park.
The park's most intense conservation efforts involve one of North America's most severely endangered species, the California condor, with its magnificent 9-foot wingspan. In 1983, when the condor had almost vanished in the wild, park experts succeeded in raising the first chicks ever hatched in captivity. The park created a super-protected environment in which to nurture these delicate new arrivals. To help the chicks maintain their wilderness instincts and reactions, keepers created a feeding puppet designed to look exactly like the chick's mother. Even though it's taking place beyond the public's view, this remarkable effort is being watched by the whole world.
When things happen big in the condor program, it goes around the world. And that's very valuable in a conservation program because education is really the only way that we're going to affect long-term conservation.
What many people don't realize is how important wildlife conservation is, not just to animals, but to the human population as well.
Here's a bird, for an example, that feeds on carrion, things that are dying of anthrax and botulism, that sort of thing. Seems to go throughout its lifetime without really picking up any of these diseases or being adversely affected by the toxins. A better understanding of how they handle some of those things might be very, very valuable to our own human medicine. There are so many species that are being lost that might hold keys, that each one that we lose without knowing anything about it, we have no idea what the value might be.
Someday the condor story will extend beyond its survival. Conservationists here are breeding and raising these birds so that new colonies can eventually be returned to the wild. A number of the park's other breeding programs share this same larger goal, reintroducing endangered and threatened species back into their original wilderness habitats.
The white animals with the long straight horns are the Arabian oryx, and they were once almost completely extinct in the wild after World War II. The few animals that were remaining were captured. Since then, we've had over 150 births of the Arabian oryx, and as a result, we've been able to help reintroduce this animal back into its native homeland, places like Jordan and Oman.
It's a very gratifying experience for everybody to be involved in that project because there are so few species that are in peril today that will be able to be released back into the wild. Not because no one is breeding that particular animal because there's no wild to be returned back into.
The urgency of the park's mission is amplified by scientific estimates that at least one species of plant or animal vanishes from the wild every day, and that number will grow to 1 per hour by the end of this century.
With an average of over 50 acres a minute being cut around the equatorial belt, what will happen there is that there are a number of species that will disappear before people even know they're gone.
There are more species of animals extinct than there are living in the world today.
Most of us on the staff here really feel like we are contributing in some way towards the propagation of the species here, and hence towards the conservation of the species as a whole worldwide.
Wild Animal Park is more than a place. It's a dream, racing against time and almost overwhelming odds to come true. A dream that life will continue to survive and thrive on planet Earth.